I was just scrolling through YouTube when I came across this video. This video has an insanely strange thumbnail, lots of views, and seemingly no channel behind it. But seriously, what the f is this? Why is Michael Jackson Arabic? And why is it more than 2 hours long? Just like 1 million others, I also wanted to find out. So I clicked. And as it turns out, it's nothing crazy. It is just jazz or this lo-fi sort of music that people listen to in the background. The image has nothing to do with the content itself, and it doesn't change. We never quite get the answers we were curious about in the beginning. Nevertheless, it achieves what its intended purpose was. It made me click. Upon a closer look, we can see that this is not just a single video that managed to blow up. The channel with no name who uploaded it has 45 other music compilations, exactly like this one. The music, as far as I can tell, is completely AI generated, with over 4 million views in total. This is pretty insane. If the channel itself is monetized and the music is licensed to him, or at the very least not copyright protected, his videos must be earning him a pretty good amount. In theory, YouTube cracks down on what they call inauthentic or repetitious content. But in practice, that boundary gets fuzzy and confusing enough that some channels just barely make it through. This is a classic example of what is called a content farm, a channel that mass produces content with the sole purpose of maximizing revenue. How do I know? Because I've done the exact same thing. Over the past year, I used a nearly identical strategy to rack up more than 2 billion views. The difference is that instead of AI music, I created short compilations. Today, I'm not here to moralize, nor to play the devil's advocate. Rather, I'm here to explain how, in a world built to reward attention, people will always find a way to exploit it. In 1973, 3 researchers walk into a nursery school. Their names are Mark Lepper, David Green, and Richard Nisbet. They don't bring much: some paper, some markers, and a stack of certificates with gold seals and little ribbons. They go and find a room full of preschoolers, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they sit back and watch. They're watching for one thing: the kids who draw. Or more specifically, those who chose to draw on their own, because drawing is the most rewarding thing in the room for them. They split them into 3 groups. To the first group, they make a promise: draw for us and you'll get a certificate, a real one, with a gold seal and a ribbon. To the second group, they say nothing. These kids just draw like they always do, and only afterward, once the drawing is done, the researchers produce the same gold sealed certificate. Surprise! This is for your hard work. To the third group, they offer nothing and give nothing. The kids draw and the researchers watch. Then, the 3 men pack up their markers and their ribbons and they leave. But the experiment isn't over. Weeks later, they return to the same place. They have no certificates this time, and they make no promises. Once again, the children are free to do whatever they like, and the 3 men sit back, the way they did before, and they watch to see who reaches for the pens. Group 3, the kids who were never promised anything, are drawing. Group 2, the kids who get a surprise, are drawing too, hunched over the paper, just as absorbed as they ever were. But the first group is different. The children who were promised the certificate, who drew on that first day knowing a prize was waiting for them at the end, now behave differently. They reach for the markers less. It seems as though they have lost some of their love for what they used to enjoy, simply because this time there was no reward for it. An arbitrary prize introduced and then removed from the activity was enough to leave Group 1 enjoying drawing less than they did before the reward existed in the first place. This is called the overjustification effect. An external reward for something you already enjoy overjustifies the behavior, so your brain drops the original reason in favor of the reward. Remove the reward, and the enjoyment is gone with it too. This effect explains why YouTube felt so different back in the day. Back then, this was really just a place to share your videos. People made things because they wanted to. They just liked building something with their own two hands, whether that was music, gameplay, or whatever else. It was all genuine, created purely for the love of the game. However, with the introduction of YouTube's partnership program, the incentives shifted. The reward got introduced to the experiment. You get the idea. People are treating the platform increasingly more as a competitive market, rather than a place to share and view content. Within this market, when you no longer capture the audience you used to, you are forced to make a decision. Either change your approach to fit the demand better, or lose part of your income, and with it, some of your intrinsic motivation to make videos as well. There is this ongoing meme that nowadays all the long-time creators quit unexpectedly and seemingly without a reason. But they do have a reason. YouTube is less fun today than it used to be.
But I would always just keep trying to grow the channel as best as I can, you know, the views are there and everyone wants them to go up, and I would stress out over every single upload. I just realized I was so addicted to YouTube at that point. It was all I really cared about. It really took up all my focus and energy for such a long time, really. So 2 years ago, I said I was gonna retire, and that confused a lot of people because I still uploaded videos. But the thing is, what I meant was I just want to do YouTube the way I did it when I started, which was for fun.
The passion projects that pulled insane numbers back in the 2010s would have no chance of going viral today.
Charlie bit me.
Nowadays, the algorithm rewards watch time, which acts as a filter for popularizing the most addictive content. Let's look at an example. On the left, you can see a video that I uploaded to this channel about a year ago. It is about the brain's ability to change itself and the science behind it. Despite the fact that I worked hard on it, and I think it has genuine value to offer, it got less than 500 views and a whopping 5 likes. On the right, you can see another video that I created. It is about a soccer ceremony and how it looks when you speed it up. It has no educational value, and it is pure spectacle. Content that you can watch with your brain essentially turned off. Do you want to guess how many views it has? Almost 400 million. His 40-second video that took less than half an hour to make made me more money than a year of work at my part-time job. Once you get a taste for going viral, it is very hard to care about the value you give to the viewer. This is why longtime viewers of channels like MrBeast or KSI say that the creators have changed over time. What was once a personal viewing experience became fast-paced and soulless, with the focus on spectacle above all else. The truth is, YouTube has the power to change the algorithm, but they have no incentive to do so. The metrics that reward slop are the same ones that keep users watching. And keeping users watching is how YouTube ultimately makes more money. Of course, none of this makes content farms more ethical towards the viewer, but it makes you understand why many creators, including me, go down that path instead of investing their effort into valuable content. This video is my attempt to give something back. I wanted to take what I learned from running a content farm and put it to good use by explaining the science behind it. So for the rest of the video, I'll break down the psychological principles behind the attention economy and hopefully give you some insight how to avoid them if you choose to do so. Right now, this channel you're watching doesn't make me any money, but my goal is to eventually do this full time instead of making brainrot shorts. So if you enjoy these kinds of videos and want to support me, click the link in the description and join my community. Thank you. Let's go back to the exact moment when I first saw that video. In the fraction of a second, a few things fire off in my brain automatically. First, I recognize Michael Jackson's face. I also recognize the traditional Middle Eastern headdress. That's a contradiction, so I'm trying to figure out how these two fit together. The picture's clearly altered, but unlike most low-res posts, there is no punchline or text, so I scan for more context. Frustratingly, there is none. There's no title, uploader name, or profile picture, only a 2-hour timestamp and... Wait, is this music? I need to check this out. In this moment, I didn't click because the video was good. I had no idea if it was good or if it was bad. I simply clicked because the thumbnail made me a promise and refused to explain it. What just happened to me is called the curiosity gap, defined as the gap between what you currently know and what you want to know. It is the sole thing that allows clickbait to exist in this world, and oh boy, are we lucky to have it. Once you encounter a gap like this, there's usually an action you can take. Of course, on YouTube this would be clicking, but this is also why movies and TV series have cliffhangers, and also why this probably made you check if you have lost your connection. And if you did, that was the whole thing. A loading animation I faked created a gap, and almost instantly you took a step towards closing that gap. That's how powerful this mechanism is. I recently saw this video titled "I learned a system for remembering everything." Combined with the clean aesthetic thumbnail, it created a curiosity gap in me, strong enough to get me to click. However, in order to please the algorithm, it is not enough to grab attention. Creators also need to keep the viewer watching, and for this reason, I'm going to analyze it. Take a look at this timeline I have here. On the bottom, I have the video itself, and on top, a blueprint for the average high-performing video. After the click, the first 3 to 5 seconds are called the hook of your video. Here, I, the viewer, get a glimpse into whether or not the video will deliver on the promise that the thumbnail and the title made. At this point, my question is it worth for me to stay here to find out more? Or should I keep scrolling for something better? This is arguably the most important part of a video, with the idea being, if I exit here, I will never get to see everything else that follows. Even if the rest is the most engaging piece of work ever created, no one is ever going to see it if the first few seconds are not making that clear. With that said, let's take a look.
Imagine being able to pick up any book, read it, and remember almost everything from it.
In this case, what I saw delivered on the promise of the video. High quality shots and the same concept I clicked for. So I decided to stay.
This kind of superpower memory recall might feel like fiction, but there are people in the real world that seem to carry an incredible ability to hold on to information. And I'm definitely not one of them. I've read hundreds of books, blogs, and newsletters, but my ability to recall any of it is terrible. So I decided to finally look into this blind spot, to learn about how the smartest people in the world remember information, and to uncover their systems so I can use them for myself.
We are now at 30 seconds. I am now invested enough to commit to a larger portion of the video. For creators, this is also where watch time usually drops the steepest, so they try their best to retain the viewers past this mark to avoid collapsing their average view duration. In this case, the creator nailed it. Notice how he still didn't deliver on the initial promise. I still don't know what the system is. He didn't close my curiosity gap. Instead, what he did is he opened up more of them. Now I have even more questions like, who are these smartest people in the world? What will he find during his research? Will it work for him? And if it worked for him, will it work for me too? By creating another curiosity gap somewhere around here and introducing it before closing the previous one, he can keep me interested and make me stay for the answer. By repeating it multiple times, creators like him are able to constantly override my desire to scroll, and therefore they lock me into watching the entire video. Now don't worry, we won't finish it here together, because at this point there's going to be nothing new from a psychology standpoint. He will go on to raise some more questions, and he can take us, the viewers, on whatever narrative journey he wants. But the way he will do that is by never allowing all the gaps to be closed at the same time. In fact, by the time he answers our original question, what is the system, we are already almost halfway through the entire video.
First, take notes while you read. Second, revisit and revise your notes when you're finished with the book. And third, categorize and file your notes.
But at this point, he raised so many questions that we have more than enough reasons to keep watching. This cycle is what's known as the curiosity loop, and it is the main mechanism of the large successes of channels like this guy, Veritasium, or Vsauce, or even someone like Mr. Beast, in their own way.
I got 100 of my subscribers and locked them inside. And for the next 10 hours, I'm gonna hunt them down.
So one clever trick, when repeated over and over again, gets you both halves of what the algorithm wants, the click and the minutes after it. These two metrics are promptly named click-through rate and audience retention.
So these YouTubers who would love to be creating content about, whatever they're most passionate about in whatever way, they also see what's popular on the site and they try to make content that will please the algorithm. And so there's a way in which the content is chasing the algorithm is chasing the audience. And if the content actually manages to catch up with the algorithm, you get a kind of perverse situation in which the algorithm is the content.
This isn't just about YouTube either. By encouraging creators to make more addictive content, all social media giants can keep their hands clean while others do the dirty work for them. In the long run, this creates a toxic cycle that harms every single party except them. Creators get addicted to clicks and retention. We've already seen this with PewDiePie. Their job essentially changes from making cool stuff to pleasing the algorithm at all costs. Viewers also get addicted to watching, which unsurprisingly comes with an array of mental health problems, and is in a large part why an entire generation of kids now have their brain permanently altered. Viewers watch because this is where their biggest source of happiness comes from, and creators upload because they have a large financial incentive.
$1 million doing so. Just for proof, one of my YouTube channels has made me over $2.4 million.
It is a self-reinforcing pattern that uses classical conditioning on both sides. I used to think that this system is relatively easy to dodge because it only works on the less intelligent. Once I understand it, I should be fine. But as it turns out, I was mistaken. Because it has almost nothing to do with intelligence, and instead it exploits our biology. That is why it works on everyone, across platforms and globally. So for the final theoretical section of this video, we are going to examine the human brain, with a particular focus on reward prediction. Dopamine guides our behavior. Yours, mine, your neighbors. Everyone already knows this. However, dopamine is also deeply misunderstood. It is a common misconception that dopamine works in the simple linear way of thirsty, drink water, boom, dopamine hit. But in reality, dopamine is more correlated with the pursuit of a reward, as a motivational state. It gets the credit for the feeling of bliss, sure, but it's also just as important for getting you to act toward it in the first place. And more importantly, it also influences how likely you are to pursue that behavior again. So much so that people who have dopamine deficiencies struggle to initiate or carry out simple movement.
I actually have, it's not so bad in my right hand, it's all in my left hand.
So from now on, stop thinking about it as the pleasure chemical and label it in your head as a prediction machine that motivates you to do things. Once we got that distinction down, we can move on to the most important part of this video. Let's introduce a new concept called reward prediction error. So your brain constantly predicts what is going to happen next and anticipates how rewarding it will be. So up top, we have the cue. This is usually an environmental cue, like stepping into a room, smelling something, or seeing someone, okay? And what happens next is the signal travels to your brain and you start to form an expectation. I rank these from low to medium to high. Now, depending on the cue, you will form different expectations. For example, you can have no expectations, you can have medium expectations, and you can have high expectations. But it all depends on the cue. So for example, if the cue is stepping into your grandma's house, it is very unlikely that you will find ecstasy in the cabinet, right? It could happen, you know, I don't know your grandma like that, but generally it is very unlikely. So you will have low to no expectations. Whereas if the cue here is stepping into a nightclub, that's an entirely different story. Suddenly your expectations might be very high. And so your brain constantly makes these predictions based on prior experiences. What happens next is you get there and the brain checks if the reward matched with the expectations. And here we have three cases. The reward can match your expectation, which would be this, this, and this. It can exceed your expectations, which would be this and this. And it can also fail to meet the expectations, like in this scenario and this one. And in edge cases, you can have no expectation whatsoever, and you know, all of a sudden a high reward, like finding ecstasy in your grandma's cabinet. Or you can have high expectations and no reward whatsoever, which is super disappointing. You get the idea. Now, all of this is very abstract, so let's look at a visual example. I happen to love Monster, the energy drink. Not sponsored, in fact, it is very bad for you, etc. But I can't help myself, I just happen to love it. So a cue for me would be seeing the fridge. As my brain processes the visual cue, we can again look at the previous three scenarios. We can have a scenario where I don't expect anything to be in that fridge, and after I open it, it turns out nothing was in the fridge. In this case, no error in the prediction. I'm not even sure why I opened the fridge in the first place, but don't lie to me, I know you sometimes do that too. We can have a scenario where I expect a monster, and there is one. Again, no error in the prediction. or that I expect a monster and this little cheese snack I'm obsessed with. And if I find both in the fridge, the reward matches the expectation again, so there was no error in the prediction. Now, if I expect a monster, then find out the fridge is empty, I will be very sad and disappointed. You can see that we got a negative score on the reward prediction. What's worse is I can expect a monster and the snack just before it turns out that there was never a snack and the monster in the fridge is spilled all over the shelf, so I didn't even get anything and now I have to clean the fridge. Or finally, I can have zero expectations of anything and I can find a monster, which would look like this. Or in very rare cases, I can find a surprise monster and a cheese snack, which don't even get me started on. You can see the positive error in my prediction. Now, bear with me because this is where it gets interesting. Let's introduce a new graph, showing my dopamine levels next to this graph in real time. And you're going to see how they interact and reinforce behaviors. As you can see, throughout the day, my dopamine level hovers at around baseline. This is basically when nothing is happening to me and I'm idle. Of course, it's never going to be completely flat because that's just how it works. Throughout the day, your motivation fluctuates, you're exposed to small stimuli, etc. But watch what happens when I start to expect a reward. Dopamine starts to raise slowly, and as I open the fridge and find the monster, I get a small bump on top as a reward. The behavior is reinforced, so I'm more likely to do it again next time. Also, notice how dopamine doesn't start to peak when I get the reward, but instead it begins to raise as soon as I realize the possibility of one. Let's look at it again. Boom! As soon as I start to form an expectation, dopamine starts to raise and then peaks before it returns to baseline. This is why I said earlier that dopamine is not just responsible for pleasure, but also for anticipation, motivation, and the pursuit of a reward. So what happens when I have zero expectations, but still get a reward? Look at this. Out of the blue, without any build-up, I get a huge spike, highly rewarding. There was a positive error in reward prediction and the behavior will get reinforced. And when I find a surprise monster and a cheese stick in the fridge without any prior expectations, the same thing happens, but now with an even larger spike. And so, your brain loves this stuff. This is why surprises have such a huge effect on people, even if it's something small. If you already have an expectation, the reward will be a relatively small bump on top of that. But if you don't expect anything, you're jumping up straight from baseline, which means a larger positive error in your prediction. Feel free to use this trick on friends or relatives. Don't tell them that they're getting anything and surprise them. They're going to love you. You're welcome. But now, let's move on to the final scenario, because I saved the best for last. When we expect a reward, but we don't get it, this is what happens. Look at that. The dopamine starts to peak as we anticipated, but as soon as reality hits, we drop below baseline. Which means that essentially nothing bad happened to you, but just because you had an expectation, now you feel worse than before. Next up, high expectations, no rewards. Boom! Insane dip. Just look at the amount of anticipation and pleasure leading up to the expected moment of the reward. And then comes the drop. Your dopamine basically jumps off an 8-story building. Needless to say, your expectations weren't met. Now that we've established this, let's take a step back and get to what I'm trying to say with all of this. The single most important thing that drives this mechanism is the error in the prediction itself. More specifically, the mismatch between the expectation and the actual reward. The higher this number gets right here, the higher the sense of pleasure and the more likely that your behavior gets reinforced. So you do it again and again and again. This whole thing is beautifully engineered by Mother Nature, but get this. The moment a reward becomes fully predictable, the prediction error collapses to zero and the dopamine burst disappears. If your fridge always had exactly one monster, opening it would stop doing anything to you within a few days. The reward is still there, but the surprise is gone, so the signal is gone with it too. So what's the opposite of that? The element of surprise.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Now we understand why the engineered version of addiction is literally a reward that you cannot predict. That's right. Reward prediction error is the same mechanism that gambling exploits. I'm talking about traditional casinos, sports betting, but recently prediction markets and video games as well. It is no surprise really that an idea that works so well by biological design will spread to every market if it isn't regulated. The rise of TikTok and short feed algorithms work in the same way. Those who don't implement some sort of unpredictable reward system into their software will get left behind. YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat had to introduce shorts, reels, and spotlights to stay relevant. Traditional stimuli that is way more predictable, like reading a book, will pale in comparison to these algorithms. This is the ugly side of optimization for optimization's sake. Eventually, when the existing market gets saturated, you need to expand. And this is how you end up with abominations like Cocomelon. At Moonbug's research facility, toddlers watch a prototype of Cocomelon episodes, while a second screen next to it plays a deliberately boring footage. Every time a child looks over, researchers log the timestamp. Those are the moments that get cut. The one thing you learn about humanity is that there is no line we won't cross if it means more income for the individual. We are at the point of being factory farmed like animals, just not for our meat, but for our time, attention, and data. Ultimately, as creators, we are responsible for what we put out there. I cannot sit here and tell you otherwise. But beyond that, there is a systematic error that underlines every single social media app. When you are competing for people's attention, you cannot keep your hands clean. If you don't turn your platform into a slot machine, you will lose. So, what is the solution? Do we need to restructure how social media works? Do we need new policies on the ethical use of content? If yes, how would we even enforce it? The truth is, I'm not sure about the answer. I believe that systematic issues need systematic solutions, but right now, it's hard to see one that would hold up in the real world. But here's the one thing I do know. Educating the public helps. Along the way of building a content farm, as I learned more and more about these principles, I slowly realized that I have more control over my own actions. I was more aware of the science of content addiction and the tricks being used on me to consume. Don't get me wrong, this doesn't sidestep their effectiveness, but instead it helps you recognize when it happens and why it happens, which makes you better at avoiding it next time. Which brings me to my own solutions. Right now on the screen you will see some notes that I wrote over the past 2 years along this journey of learning about the attention economy. I originally wrote them only for myself to understand content addiction, but I really wanted to keep this part value first and actionable, so I rewrote them so everything can be implemented by you, the viewer. If you take one thing away from this video, please be it one of these notes. They are mostly simple software or behavioral solutions, but they genuinely changed my life. And I want you to pause the video and read them for yourself, because it is really one of the only ways that you can also benefit from them. If I were to spoon feed you all of this information by explaining each of them with nice visuals, it would lose the exact effort required to implement them. It is way easier to listen to me talk than to actually pause the video and go word by word and make the concepts truly yours. I explained in my previous video why that is, so if you're interested, you can click on the card in the corner. Now I will leave you with the stack of my notes here to draw your own conclusions from them and hopefully deliver you some real lasting change. With that said, this time more than ever, I am grateful for your attention.